Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of our ongoing editorial webinar series, Coffee Talk. Each hour-long information-packed episode, organized by the hardworking folks at Redmond Magazine, features the observations and insights of an independent expert on a wide range of tech industry topics. Many thanks to the underwriting sponsor of this episode, Spanning, a Kaseya company, a global leader in SaaS cloud-to-cloud backup. Without their support, this series would not be possible. And thanks to you for joining us. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief of the Converge 360 Group of 1105 Media, and I'll be your moderator. Today's topic is SaaS and your digital transformation, what IT managers need to know. And our main presenter is technologist, creator of compelling content, and senior resultant, Howard M. Cohen. But before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. This episode is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. We'll make some time during the talk for questions. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. Our sponsor has provided some extra resources you won't want to miss. They're available now on your console. And as a small thank you to the first 200 attendees who stick with us to the end, we will be sending you a $5 gift certificate to Starbucks. It's a cup of joe to go with the info. Now let's meet our first speaker. Howard M. Cohen has spent more than 40 years in the IT industry. During that time, he has held senior executive positions in many of the top channel partner organizations, and he currently writes for and about IT and the IT channel. He's a sought-after speaker, an insightful observer of the technology landscape, and one of our favorite presenters. You're in for a great session. Take it away, Howard.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome everybody to today's presentation about SaaS and your digital transformation. Anybody who has been at any of my presentations, and I know some of you are out there who have, you know that I like to start every presentation with a word of the day. Today's word is adapt. Adapt. And what I'm referring to when I use the word adapt as today's word of the day is the idea of adapting the way you work. What you're looking at is the cover of a 10-year-old white paper, The Future of the Workplace, Why You Need to Change the Way You Work. And the fact is that changing the way you work is something very few of us ever really want to do. Nobody likes change. Everybody is allergic to change. But what we're going to talk about today is how it may be worthwhile to change the way you work. You see, for the longest time, when we need software to run our business, everybody has wanted someone to custom code software specifically for them, software that adapts to the way they do what they do. And that has been the rule for a long, long time. It is not, however, necessarily the best way to do it. We may find that it makes more sense to achieve digital transformation by using SaaS and adapting the way you work to the software, rather than adapting the software to the way you work. Before we get into that discussion, let's define our terms. Okay, I always like to define our terms so I'm sure we're all speaking on the same page. And the first of the terms that we're using in today's title is digital transformation. What exactly is a digital transformation? Now, the fact is that if you go and search on that, you'll get a lot of different opinions, a lot of different definitions. So I thought I'd share a few with you to sample what the market has to offer in terms of the definition of digital transformation. Our first stop is the folks at Forrester, who say that digital transformation is not just about technology. And frankly, if you take away anything from today's presentation, I'd like it to be that digital transformation is not just about technology. That is one of the key points today. Another one of the key points is the last sentence of this definition, which is the objective is to free people to do more complex tasks, tasks that require more of their intelligence, their intuition, their talent, tasks that are quite frankly more gratifying, more satisfying for people. So we want to take away the repetitive and mundane tasks if we possibly can. The folks at Harvard Business Review, another group of very intelligent people, say that digital transformation requires talent. And of course, talent resides with people. And they point out assembling the right team of people is important in four specific domains: technology, data, process, and organizational change. Um, I like to redefine that a little bit as acculturation. But the most important thing is to bring together those people with their skills to work together to create digital transformation by applying technology to the things everybody is doing. The folks at McKinsey agree. It's an effort to enable existing business models. It lets you use digital technologies to integrate into already existing business models. I'll change the word integrate to apply. Basically, digital transformation is achieved when we apply technologies in a specific and more productive way. We get some numbers from the folks at Boston Consulting Group. BCG tells us that about a third of organizations, only a third, successfully meet the challenge of digital disruption. Okay. Digital disruption, another buzz phrase from the past. But they point out that those who make the big bet, who really make the investments, can achieve some substantial return for their stakeholders. So that's all well and good. The folks at Citrix obviously are selling what it is they sell. It represents myriad tools, solutions, processes, and it's customized for each unique organization. And at the end, they tell you that you need to strategically adopt beneficial technologies like a digital workplace. And of course, that's exactly what Citrix provides. And it is indeed true that digital transformation requires a digital workspace in which all the tools are coming in through the computer and people are using them. Red Hat chimes in saying that digital transformation is what's happening to organizations as they adopt new and innovative ways to do business based on technological advances. That's a mouthful, but it says the same thing we've been hearing from everybody else. Apply the right technologies and you can achieve amazing advancement. Microsoft has to use one of their popular Microsoft-ese words, reimagining. We are reimagining how you bring together people, data, and processes. And anybody who's worked with Microsoft for any length of time knows that those are very popular themes in the Microsoft world. Reimagining things to bring together people, data, and processes, and get a competitive advantage in a digital first and also mobile first and also cloud first world. It makes me wonder who's on first. Okay. I like to bring it all together into one statement that digital transformation is not so much about technology as it is about what technology lets people do and makes it possible for people to do better, faster, more accurately. It takes away the mundane stuff, the repetitive stuff, and lets people really use the full measure of their capabilities. So those are some definitions from the field about digital transformation. Here's something that digital transformation is not. It is not the implementation of new equipment. Here we are at the City Treasurer's Department installing brand spanking new electronic computer equipment. That is not a digital transformation unto itself. That is an upgrade. So it's not that. It's certainly not this kind of transformation. We don't want to see that happen, no. But it does resemble to some extent this transformation, where we somehow or other end up close to where we began. And of course, we improve and improve by applying technology to what people do. Okay, I think we've beaten the definition of digital transformation to death enough. Let's get on to the other word that we're using here, which is SaaS. Let's define SaaS. SaaS, of course, is an acronym for Software as a Service. And again, a couple of definitions from the field. Gartner says that it's software that is owned, delivered, and managed remotely by one or more providers. I'm going to stick with that for a moment. Owned, delivered, and managed remotely. That means that it's in somebody else's data center. More important, it's not in your data center. As a matter of fact, when you're using SaaS, you don't need to have a data center anymore. So you can actually rid yourself of your data center by using SaaS. You're using somebody else's data center. And it doesn't have to be just one. I mean, how many of us don't use software from more than one software developer? We use a different package for security, a different package for productivity. There's many different packages we use, and they're almost never all from the same provider. So now instead, we're choosing from more than one service provider. We're choosing more than one service instead of more than one package. And that's the definition from there. Somebody else is moving the slides. Hang on, let me get back to work. Let me try to get back to where we were. Okay, Microsoft says that software as a service allows users to connect to and use cloud-based apps over the internet. And of course, they bring up Microsoft 365. I'm a little surprised they didn't get around to Azure in this slide. But Microsoft has really become, at its core, a cloud services company. And they are focusing on delivering everything as SaaS. They also point out that you purchase it on a pay-as-you-go basis from a cloud service provider. Pay-as-you-go, consumption-based billing. You only pay for what you use. Those are all good news to any IT manager and certainly to any CFO. So there's a good point. Microsoft also points out to us that all of the underlying infrastructure, middleware, app software, and app data are located in the service provider's data center. Once again, it's not your data center. You don't have one. You're not running one. You're not spending on one. The service provider, and I'll highlight it to emphasize, the service provider manages the hardware and software. And they also ensure the availability and security of the app and your data as well. And there, I'm going to stop with an admonition that even though they say that they protect the security of your data, that does not mean at any point that they take responsibility for your data. Responsibility of your data always rests with you. You'll see it in the contract that you enter into with any cloud service provider. They can't take responsibility for your data. You own that. And there are many ways in which you can add the necessary controls and protection to make sure that you exercise that responsibility. Fact of the matter is, if you think about it, if something happens to your data, if your data is compromised in any way, if it's corrupted or lost or stolen, who's going to lose their job? Not Microsoft. So that's why I emphasize that although they say they protect it, and they do it very well, you own the bottom line end result responsibility for the safety of your data. The folks who wrote all the rules, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, says that basically you can use the provider's applications running on a cloud infrastructure, not your infrastructure. And you can access it from just about any device, a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, a desktop, if you still have one. And you can use various different kinds of interfaces. You may use a web browser. It's just that simple. Some may use VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. Why not? Use a thin client. And you may be using software for which the provider gives you an interface on your device, a dedicated interface specifically for their software. Many different ways, lots of flexibility, and you can take advantage of all of it. They also point out to us that the consumer does not manage or control, and let me again highlight for emphasis, You do not manage or control the underlying cloud infrastructure, including the servers, the operating systems, the storage, even the application's capabilities. You may have some ability to configure the application for your specific use, but you don't own responsibility for any of that. That's all gone. And what you really get to do, and what your people get to do, is focus on the work at hand, not the tools they're using to achieve the work. Okay, so now we've basically illustrated what we're talking about by running through the definitions of digital transformation and SaaS. So then the next question is, how do we get from where we are to where we want to be in the wonderful waters of SaaS? And so let's examine that. Let's examine the journey. The journey began for all of us at one point or another, and for many of us long, long ago, on premises. In the on-premises world, we owned responsibility for all of our servers and all of our storage devices and all of our storage systems and the software and the data itself. We owned all of that. As a matter of fact, we also owned the place where it was all deployed. We owned the physical plant. It was our data center. Whether we leased it, rented it, owned it, or what have you, we were responsible for running it. That meant that also we were responsible for the infrastructure that connected it all together and connected all of that to the internet and other locations. It also meant that we were responsible for running all of it, which required electrical power. And keeping it running smoothly meant that we had to keep the data center cool. And each of those costs about $1,000 per server per month. So multiply 2,000 times the number of servers you have, and you can just get a sense of the budget required to run your own data center, those of you who remember doing that. You also had to maintain all of that equipment, meaning that you either had a service contract or you employed people who went around fixing things when they broke. In addition to maintaining and keeping it all running, you had responsibility for administration, which meant running all of it, operating all of it, and making sure that it continued operating properly. And if anybody had a problem, that you were resolving it by providing them with application support so that they knew how to use what they were there to use, which meant that, bottom line, you owned responsibility for the user community as well. That's a big list. You had a lot on your plate. You decided then, based on everything you were hearing, that you had to move to the cloud. And when you first moved to the cloud, what you were moving to was infrastructure as a service, not yet software as a service. You were moving to infrastructure as a service. And the good news, the really great news, is when you did that, you offloaded all of that. No longer were you worried about the servers, the storage, the physical plant, the infrastructure, the power, the cooling, or the maintenance of anything. You didn't have any hardware anymore. You didn't have any of that in your data center. As a matter of fact, you no longer had a data center. You no longer needed a data center. Your expenses, your costs dropped precipitously, and instead you're paying a monthly recurring fee or a quarterly recurring fee, or to save money, an annual recurring fee. You were still responsible for running all of it because you were still using your applications running on their infrastructure. And therefore, you had to support those applications, and you were still responsible for your users. But look at that. 5 out of 8 gone, right off the list. Okay, let's complete the journey. Let us get now to the world of SaaS. In the world of SaaS, we look at the 3 that we have left, and boom, 2 of them are gone. We don't have to provide any administration because it's not our software to run. The software provider is running the software. And in terms of application support, yeah, we could have people supporting our people's use of that software specifically for our purposes. But in general, the application support for actually using the software comes from the SaaS provider. Great. So all we have left is responsibility for what engineers say is the most difficult part of any network to manage, the users. Good news. So we have that, and that's all that's left. So now I'm going to ask what will probably appear to you to be a stupid question. Why is this preferable? Why would you rather do it this way? And to answer that, we're going to take a look at the world. The whole wide, woolly world is spinning around, and across this wonderful world of ours, there are over 4 million, what am I going to say here? There are over 4 million open job requisitions for technology-based positions. There are 4 million jobs looking to be filled for which companies can't find people. They can't locate people to take these jobs. And these are jobs operating servers and storage, running infrastructure, managing applications, supporting users, training, managing security. 4 million open job recs that remain unfilled. And these have been growing by leaps and bounds every year since 2005. So what's that? 18 years it's been growing and growing, and the curve is continuing. I'll be here next year with another big number. It's ridiculous. We can't fill those positions. We can't get the people we need to do the jobs. So what we really need to do is reduce the jobs. We have to assign more tasks to automation. And by sharing the infrastructure of a cloud provider, we can support hundreds of companies, thousands of companies on one big set of infrastructure operated by one team. That's an amazing economy of scale. That also means that we don't have to be looking for as many people that we simply can't get. Another thing that changes when we do this is the idea of a self-service portal. Everybody, NIST, who wrote the definition of cloud computing, heralds the wonders of having a self-service portal. Users can provision their own storage and their own memory and their own processor power. And I have seldom met users who want to do that. And matter of fact, most users are pretty allergic to having to do things like that. They don't necessarily understand the scope of what a megabyte or a gigabyte or a terabyte is. And so they don't know exactly what to ask for. Well, good news, with SaaS, you don't have and you don't need a self-service portal. You have a configuration portal that your administrators use to set you up in the beginning. But from there, people just use the software. And so the concept of a self-service portal becomes unnecessary. Another thing that diminishes tremendously is the concept of the cost of failure. How much does failure cost? Well, try to imagine it this way. Let's go back to on-prem. So we order a whole bunch of servers and storage equipment, and we install and implement a network with all the routers and switches and stuff that requires. And then we buy software. We invest in software that we probably have custom coded just for us, and that sure ain't cheap. We put this all into a very big space that we either rent, lease, or buy. The investments continue rolling, and then we start using it. And oh my gosh, it's not working. This is not the software we need. What do we do? Well, hopefully we can preserve some of those investments, but that failure is career altering for many people. So let's compare that now to what happens when we choose the wrong SaaS application. So we choose a SaaS application and we take out a subscription for as many users as we have. And we start training them and get them using the software and realize, gee, this is just not the right software for us. What does that cost? We cancel our subscriptions. We find a new product. We subscribe to that software. It costs time, it costs some effort, and yeah, we've probably spent a little bit of money on subscriptions, but it is a fraction, an infinitesimal fraction of what we spent building a data center. So the cost of failure is almost negligible, and that turns failure into what it really ought to be, a learning experience. We want to fail because it's the only way we learn. When we do things right, nothing changes. So FAIL now becomes an acronym for First Attempt in Learning. I love this. First attempt in learning. And we can have a second attempt, which would be SAIL, I guess. And a third attempt, which would be TAIL. I'm not going to keep going. Failure is not as critical and crucial as it would be if we had made all those enormous investments up front. Now, we can fail quickly and fail inexpensively. This means that we've suddenly gotten an enormous boost in agility. We can dodge and weave really quickly. We can change software products. We can move. We can decide to grow things, shrink things. Speaking of growing and shrinking, we also get fantastic scalability. We can scale up, we can scale out, we can add new functionality, we can add more users, we can add more storage capability, what have you. And it's a two-way street. We can scale to accommodate growth upward, or we can scale to accommodate growth downward. We can accommodate a growing company or a shrinking company. We can acquire companies and accommodate that. The scalability is amazing. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that when we're using SaaS, we have fantastic mobility. We can access from any device, from anywhere where we can access the internet securely. That means that we have the devices already connected to communicate with each other, and therefore our communications are significantly enhanced. The final concept that I want to talk about is the idea of acceleration. The concept of acceleration, who's better at it than the Roadrunner? And what are we accelerating? Well, the first thing we're accelerating is innovation. We can innovate. We can try something new. It doesn't cost as much for it to fail. We can make adjustments rapidly on the fly. And therefore, we can try things out. We can try another thing out. Feel free. So we accelerate innovation. And ultimately, and this is really bringing it back to where we started, SaaS accelerates digital transformation. When we're using SaaS, we can make all the decisions we need to make to apply different technologies to the way our people do things. And yes, our people may have to adapt to the way those technologies work, but it's pretty minor. And in many cases, that adaptation shows us new things we hadn't thought of before. And what better way to improve any operation? So SaaS accelerates digital transformation. And that, to my mind, is what IT managers need to know. With that, I'll turn back to my friend John and see if we have any questions. John? Are you out there, John?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, if you have any questions, be sure and type them into the Q&A box. Let me ask you this one here, Howard. You talk about using SaaS for your digital transformation. Are you saying that the company has to completely change the way it operates, completely transform to accommodate the software service?
I'm sorry, John, say that again. I lost a little bit of it.
That's all right. It's when you talk about using SaaS for your digital transformation, are you saying that the company has to completely change the way it operates, completely transform to accommodate the software service?
Boy. Oh, that has to be somebody who was at a recent presentation of mine, because I got pretty into my own space about how I don't like the term digital transformation, because we're not required to digitally transform all the time. I would so much prefer talking about digital improvement or technology-based improvement, because that's what we're doing. We're improving the way we do things. And it doesn't mean that we have to have a wholesale change of absolutely everything. And, we were yellow yesterday and we're red tomorrow. That's not how it works. Thank you for that question. No, it's not a wholesale change necessarily. It's the change that will best help your people be more productive and more successful.
Okay, let's ask this one here. How can a SaaS application be customized to serve a specific business? Aren't they more general in nature?
They are. They absolutely are more general in nature. And the fact of the matter is that while every business operates differently, there is a large proportion of commonality. It could be 60%, 80%, could be 90%. The different businesses within the same industry operate similarly. And smart SaaS developers provide the flexibility in their configuration so that you can adapt that software to your specific. And remember, this presentation was about adapting to the software, not adapting the software to you. But that doesn't mean it doesn't meet you somewhere. There definitely is a point of of compromise where the software meets you. And in most cases, you learn that in the search process. When you're looking for the right SaaS package, that's what you're looking for. Does this get close enough to the way we work that we can adapt easily to it? That's a big part of the process of search.
So I've got a question here from Stanley, which I actually hear a lot. If you don't control the environment or the app, how could you be responsible for your data?
Okay, and I'll answer that question in one word, Stanley, and that word is encryption. If you've been to, I'm surprised I didn't do it today. I always talk about how data must always be encrypted. This is not a new concept from me. This is something I learned a million years ago. You always have to have your data encrypted, not just when it's in transport from one place to another. That makes total sense naturally, but also when it's at rest in storage. It's got to always be encrypted. And you do not give the cloud provider your key. They don't need it. They have no interest in your workload. They have no interest at all in that data. So don't give them the key, but keep your data encrypted at all times. And suddenly it becomes very close to impossible for bad actors to get at your data unless they've somehow managed to pilfer your key.
Okay, here's one from our old friend Lynn. Hi, Lynn. How do IT managers address concerns? I know you were excited. How do IT managers address concerns related to the performance and scalability of SaaS applications, especially as digital transformation initiatives evolve and grow?
Yeah, that's called managing, is what that's called. And I really appreciate this question, Lynn. Thank you. This one will take less than the rest of the day to answer. I can actually answer it. It's a function. Well, first of all, how do you account for it? If the software doesn't continue to meet your needs, with SaaS, you can replace it. So you get to fire them and hire somebody new. That's not the greatest solution in the world. And hopefully they've designed their software well to grow with you. And I personally, having implemented many SaaS projects, I think SaaS developers do an amazing job of preserving scalability in many, many, many ways. Even as digital transformations, I mean, everything evolves. Anything that doesn't evolve dies, right? That's what happened to Latin. It's a dead language because it didn't continue to evolve. Okay, but with SaaS, you have several opportunities. One is to replace it. Another is to appeal to your SaaS provider. Not for nothing, but software providers consist of people, developers, and entrepreneurs who want to continue to sell their software and their software service. So nothing stops you from communicating to them, hey, I have a need. And you don't have to be a mammoth company. I've managed moderately sized companies that got the ear of developers when something new was needed. And in fact, they will often thank you for sharing an idea with them that benefits a lot of their customers. So that's your second option. And your third option is to figure out ways to modify your operation to fit the way the software works, which is actually more often than not achievable, far more than you think.